My name is Mia, and I'm 41 years old. I must confess that I have an unhealthy addiction to German soap operas. I've been binging drama after drama because there are so many alternatives available on different streaming sites, and I'm really addicted. The emotion, the twists, and the characters never let you down. There are betrayals, cliffhangers, and strong feelings in every episode, making it hard to put it down. However, I had no idea that my actual life was about to take a dramatic turn of its own while I was engrossed in the drama on screen. Allow me to transport you to nearly 4 years prior. I was living with my husband at the time, who was a little older than myself. I had learned to live with the fact that we were childless. I reasoned that it wouldn't hurt to concentrate on the two of us and have some quality time together. Everything was going well, or so I thought, until one day it all began to fall apart. It all started with a phone call from Laura, my closest friend. Laura and I were childhood friends. She had even attended my wedding. So our shared past was extensive. I was eager to catch up when I saw her name on my phone, but this time her voice seemed different, more serious and hushed. "Mia, it's been a long time. Hey, I only wanted to inform you about my divorce." Her remarks came as a huge brick to me. It had really surprised me. "Oh my goodness, Laura, I'm so sorry," I murmured, experiencing a mixture of shock and compassion. "It must have been really difficult for you. Let's get together soon." "All right, let's grab some drinks and chat." Even after our call ended, I was still stunned. While I was sorry for Laura, I was also excited to tell my husband the news. I started talking about it as soon as I arrived home, but my husband casually added, "I know Laura got divorced, right?" Before I could say anything more, I became motionless. How on earth could he be aware of that? I still hadn't told him. "Wait, how did you know she got divorced?" I questioned, perplexed. I stayed silent about it. "Oh, I must have overheard you talking about it or something," he said, appearing a little uncomfortable and taken aback. It didn't feel quite right. Although I was positive I hadn't mentioned Laura's predicament to him yet, I tried not to second-guess myself and continued the conversation by adding, "Well, yeah, she's divorced now. We're planning to get together for a girls' night out and some drinks shortly." I was surprised by my husband's prompt response. "I'll accompany you as well. Laura will benefit from having both of us around to help her." I couldn't understand. "You want to come? Hold on. It's meant to be a night for the girls. Really, I have no idea why you would want to attend." But he was adamant that I ask Laura whether it's acceptable if he comes along. I reluctantly consented, even though it was unusual, and contacted Laura to let her know. To be honest, I thought she would say no. Who, after all, takes their husband along on a girls' night out, particularly when you're meant to be consoling a friend? Laura, though, surprised me by saying, "Yeah, that sounds fantastic. Come on, let's all have a drink." Her excitement confused me. Instead of suggesting that we keep it just the two of us, as I had planned, she seemed more than glad for my husband to accompany her. I was suddenly in an uncomfortable and perplexing situation that I hadn't anticipated. The thought of the four of us going out together didn't sit well with me, especially because Laura and I were meant to be bonding over this and her sharing her experiences. I could not exactly place it, but now it felt like I was being drawn towards something. I wasn't comfortable with my husband's abrupt desire to join us or Laura's unexpected acceptance, but I couldn't put my finger on why. We ultimately left as scheduled, but I couldn't get rid of the uneasy feeling I had. My best buddy and I had planned a straightforward get-together, but the evening ended with more questions than answers. The true drama in my life was just getting started, much like the soap operas I adore, so it was a night I'd rather not repeat. That night, I was the only one who felt a little off. But as my husband, Laura, and I had all gathered for a night out together, everything had seemed just fine. It was far more enjoyable than I had anticipated. Laura's main complaints were directed on her ex-husband, citing his inappropriate actions and disregard for their marriage. In an attempt to lighten the situation and cheer her up, we laughed. Laura seemed to have the entire room to herself at one time, venting her annoyances as my spouse and I cracked jokes. Laura had recently gone through a divorce, so it was pleasant to see her in a happy mood. That night, I was glad that we had all gathered to help her. It felt for a while like old times, just pals having a good time. However, something occurred that caused me to feel differently about the evening. I once excused myself to go to the bathroom. I didn't give it much thought until I returned and observed something that caused me to halt before going back to the table. The way my husband and Laura were speaking and gazing at each other. It appeared overly personal. Their eye contact and body language conveyed an uneasy feeling that I couldn't quite put my finger on. They hadn't laid eyes on one another since our nuptials years prior. So how, just a few beers later, did they get back to being so close? I briefly had the impression that I was interfering with a date between two people who were simply too at ease with one another. Doubts flew through my head, but I ignored them and took a seat. The moment I sat down, everything appeared to return to normal. They pretended as if everything had gone wrong and that the bizarre event I had seen was all in my brain. I couldn't get rid of the uneasy feeling, even though I wondered if I was overreacting. It hung around, looming over the remainder of the evening. I made the decision to settle the bill when it was time to leave in the hopes of capping the evening. By now, Laura was really inebriated, and just as I was getting ready to assist her, my husband remarked, "I'll take her home." It took me by surprise how casual he seemed to be. The statement was, "I'll take her home," not, "Let's take her home." It was a little hurtful how casual it was. Perplexed, I blinked. "But why are you doing this? Unlike her, I'm not as inebriated. I'm your wife. We ought to accompany her." However, he dismissed me. "She is shaky now that she is living alone. She can't go home by herself. It's too late. You get in a taxi and drive yourself home." There was something off with it. She is willing to go straight to her flat if you put her in a taxi. What's wrong? He gave a head shake. "I'm worried she won't make it to her apartment on her own." I became motionless. How was he aware that Laura was now living alone? Was it while I was in the restroom that she told him? Although that little information only served to heighten my uneasiness and mistrust, it was still plausible. When the pieces didn't fit, I replied in a low voice, "Okay, I'll go home myself then," as opposed to pushing back. I left the restaurant after that, leaving Laura and my husband together. Leaving her with my husband alone wasn't what I wanted. But then I had another thought. I had the opportunity to investigate whatever was going on between them when I went home alone. Something unsaid permeated the air, something I had to solve. When I came home, I knew just where to begin. In the house, my husband had a quiet study that he used alone for himself. Instead of being a bedroom, it served as his private haven, containing his work, documents, and books. Perhaps, just perhaps, it contained the solutions I required. Feeling the weight of my suspicions, I entered the study with my heart racing. At that point, I felt I could no longer ignore the signs, even if I wasn't sure what I would find. It was time to uncover the truth. Whatever it was that was going on between my husband and Laura. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. I thought about going to Laura's place to confront her directly, but that seemed too harsh. The idea of searching for answers in my own home felt both right and incredibly insulting at the same time. With this conflict in my mind, I started looking through my husband's study, scanning the shelves for anything out of place. That's when I found it, a single, simple photo album tucked away, something I didn't remember ever seeing before. My heart pounded with dread as I reached for it, knowing deep down that whatever was inside, I probably didn't want to see. With shaky hands, I flipped through the pages and instantly wished I hadn't. The album was full of pictures of my husband and Laura smiling together, looking far too happy. As I flipped through more pages, it became clear they had been meeting secretly for years. Judging by Laura's hairstyles and my husband's clothes, this affair had been going on almost since the beginning of my marriage. Over 7 years, they had been seeing each other behind my back. The weight of it hit me like a tidal wave. I felt sick. My stomach churned. Combining my drunkenness with the disgust and betrayal flooding through me, I rushed to the bathroom, barely holding back the urge to vomit. Just as I leaned over the sink, I heard the front door open. My husband had come home. Home? Oh, you threw up. You drank too much, didn't you? He said casually as if nothing was wrong, gently rubbing my back. Don't touch me, I snapped, shoving him away and slapping his hand. Don't even touch me. He looked confused and tried to act calm. Hey, it's me. Hold on, I'll get you some water. He thought I was just drunk, too far gone to know what was happening, but I wasn't. I was very aware and I hated him. I wanted to drink enough to forget, to make the pain disappear, but that wasn't an option. Go sit in the living room, I managed to say. We need to talk. He paused, then asked, What's wrong with you? You're in a bad mood because I dropped Laura off? Seriously. He tried to make light of it, almost like he was joking, but his attempt at humor made me sick. I took a deep breath and gathered my thoughts. I wasn't going to play games. Let me ask you something, I said, walking into the living room with a photo album in hand. I held it up, showing him the cover. His face immediately went pale. First question, I continued, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. What does this picture show? He didn't answer. His silence told me everything I already knew. Second question, I pressed. This is a yes or no question. Is there any wife in the world who could look at this photo and be okay with it? Again, silence. I took a step closer, my anger rising. Third question. How do you think I feel right now? Go ahead. Give me your answer. He stood there speechless, refusing to look me in the eyes. The quiet was unbearable, making me even angrier. Why don't you say something instead of just standing there? I spat, my voice shaking with rage. Stop acting like this is my fault. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, he sighed and spoke. Okay, I cheated. I'm really stupid. I'm sorry. His apology felt hollow, empty, like he was only saying it because he had been caught. There was no real emotion behind it, no regret. If he had broken down, cried, and begged for forgiveness, I might have felt better. But the way he was so calm and detached made me feel even worse. Then, without warning, he said the words that shattered everything. She's the one for me, he admitted, his voice quiet but firm. Laura and I, we both married the wrong people. After all these years, after everything, we finally found each other. We're soulmates. I stared at him, unable to process what I had just heard. Soulmates? Destiny? What was this? Some kind of romantic poem? It was like I didn't even know the man standing in front of me. What are you, a poet now? I snapped, disbelief and hurt washing over me. I couldn't believe he was saying these things so casually, like it was all part of some love story I was supposed to understand. But I didn't understand. I couldn't. After years of marriage, years of trust, he was telling me it had all been a lie. His heart had belonged to someone else the whole time, and worse, that someone was my best friend. At that moment, the reality of it all hit me. There was no fixing this, no going back. The person I thought I knew, the life I thought I had, was gone. As I stood there holding that photo album, I realized that the real drama wasn't in the German soap operas I watched on TV. It was happening in my own life. I was completely speechless. One moment my husband was confessing to an affair with Laura, and the next, he was talking about soulmates and spirituality, as if he'd suddenly transformed into some kind of spiritual guru. "I know I made a mistake marrying you," he began. "Our soul vibrations are different. We can't be happy together. This is all a test of fate for me and Laura." I just stared at him, my mind struggling to keep up. What on earth was he talking about? He had gone completely off the deep end into some other dimension I couldn't reach. "You and I are not connected on a spiritual level," he continued, looking at me like he was doing me some kind of favor by explaining. "I hope you understand. I didn't understand anything. I had no idea what soul vibrations meant or what kind of test of fate he was talking about. What I did understand was that my husband and my best friend had betrayed me. That much was clear. But strangely, I couldn't even cry. I felt numb. In my mind, I was already giving him up to Laura. If they wanted to be together, fine. He wasn't exactly the greatest husband, and frankly, they probably deserved each other. "I have no idea what you're talking about," I said, cutting through the spiritual nonsense. "Except for the fact that you're speaking English." He looked a little stunned, but I wasn't done. "Honestly, I don't think you and I are compatible either. I always knew you were a bit crazy, but I don't understand any of it." My husband sighed, like he had been expecting this response. "So if you feel that way, you'll agree to divorce me peacefully, right? I want to be with Laura." I saw where this was heading. He wanted out, clean and simple, no mucking around. But I wasn't about to let him off that easy. "Oh, I see," I said, playing along. "So no alimony then, huh?" He looked confused for a second, like he didn't understand what I was getting at. No, that's not what I cut him off, my voice flat and emotionless. "I'm sorry. I must not be spiritually tuned in. I can't hear you anymore," I said, even though just a minute ago I could. My husband blinked, trying to process my sarcastic reply. "Amy, what are you talking about?" I had given him a ridiculous answer to his ridiculous request, and now he was the one who was confused. But I didn't care. I stayed silent, completely ignoring him as I walked into the bathroom and turned on the shower. I could hear him shouting behind me. "Amy, what kind of person just walks away in the middle of an important conversation? I'll never be free unless you agree to divorce me." But I wasn't listening. In my mind, I was already free. From that moment on, he was nothing more than a speck of dust, as worthless as mold in the corner of a bathtub. He meant nothing to me anymore. I had made up my mind. I would do what I wanted, and he could be with Laura if that's what he wanted. The next morning, he left for work in a foul mood. He didn't even bother to say goodbye, and I didn't either. I didn't make his coffee, I didn't pack his lunch, and I definitely didn't help him find his tie like I used to. It was my day off from being a wife. I got out of bed just in time to watch him leave. Well, that's it, I thought. I guess I'm living alone from today onward. With that in mind, I decided to tidy up my space and make the house feel more like mine. That evening, when he came home, I didn't greet him at the door. I heard him call out, "I'm home," from the front porch, but I didn't answer. He walked in and suddenly shouted, "Hey, where are all my shoes?" I smirked to myself. I had thrown them out earlier. He stormed through the house, calling my name. "Amy, where are you? Why did you throw away my shoes?" I was sitting at the dining table, calmly eating an expensive steak and sipping champagne. He burst into the room, shocked to see me enjoying dinner without him. "Why are you eating without me?" he asked, his voice rising with frustration. I barely looked up. Because I live here alone now, I said flatly, taking another bite of my steak. It's normal to eat alone when you live alone. His mouth hung open in disbelief, and I just smiled as I poured myself another glass of champagne. I've saved up plenty of money, I said, waving a hand toward my meal, so I'm enjoying the finer things now. Expensive steak, fine champagne. This is my life from now on. With that, I went back to my dinner, leaving him standing there, speechless and lost. It was the first time in years I had felt truly free. I didn't even bother making eye contact with my husband. I just kept my eyes glued to the TV, laughing at whatever was on while enjoying my dinner. I could feel him staring at me, frustrated. "Amy, are you even listening to me?" he snapped. I casually poured myself another glass of champagne, acting like he wasn't even there. I could hear the irritation in his voice, but it only made me more amused. "You've got to be kidding me," he muttered under his breath. "We'll talk after I get out of the shower, okay?" I watched him head upstairs to grab his pajamas. A few minutes later, I heard a loud thud and clattering from the staircase. I didn't even flinch, still focused on my food. Moments later, he was back downstairs, his voice full of disbelief. "Amy, why is there nothing in my room? Where are my pajamas?" he shouted. "I live alone," I quietly said, not even glancing at him. He just stood there, totally perplexed. "What is your problem? I am unable to even bathe. Are you implying that I no longer require clothing?" I smirked to myself, saying nothing. I merely got up from the table after finishing my dinner, while continuing to ignore him. My spouse trailed me around the house, obviously bewildered. He asked, "Where's my food?" I turned to face him, and at last met his gaze. "Go purchase food for yourself. How many times must I reiterate this to you? I currently live alone." Without saying anything else, I headed directly into the bedroom. Not only had I already bathed, but I had also, incidentally, thrown away his toothbrush. I was eager to see how he would handle going without it the following morning. The following morning, he was sitting in a chair, lost in contemplation, resembling a statue. The Thinker by Rodin, I noticed. His hair from the previous night was still unclean and sticky. I felt a tiny bit of harsh joy knowing that his thinning hair simply brought attention to his scalp. He hurried over and knelt down in front of me as soon as he realized I was awake, frantically attempting to gather himself. "Amy, I'm so sorry," he uttered in a cracked whisper. "I have not made a good husband. I have harmed you numerous times without even realizing it. I am aware of my terrible actions. Please pardon me." I blinked, shocked. I didn't think he would go this far. He was pleading with God for pardon. With a desperate tone, he went on, "I want us to start afresh. I'll adapt. I'll exert all necessary effort." For a moment, I was dumbfounded. I said nothing at all. Rather, I just managed to give him the most disgusted face I could. When I finally said, No, I shook my head. There's no way I can live with this spiritually cheating, emotionally unstable guy. Shock distorted his face. He hadn't anticipated such response. His voice quivered as he questioned, "You don't like it? Can't you at least think about what I've done for you?" I arched an eyebrow, amazed he was able to ask such a question at all. "I assume you're kidding. Do you really think I'll just forgive you after everything you've done?" He persisted in pleading, "Amy, please speak out. I'll carry out your requests. Give me one opportunity, please." This game was familiar to me. This was his go-to move in whatever argument we had. He would pretend to be accommodating and offer to purchase me a pricey item, such as a pocketbook, as a means of making things right. I wasn't going along with it this time, though. He would definitely use his standard negotiating techniques. I knew that if I remained silent long enough. Taking a deep breath, I whispered to him, "Okay then, do exactly what I say." There was a brief brightening of his face. At last, I broke into a smile, my words finally ready to come out. Go. That's my desire. I'd been hoping for just the look of misery that spread across his face, his lips hanging open like a silent wail from a monk. He was crushed. It was somehow satisfying to watch him like this. No, that wasn't my intention. You're not serious at all. I mean business. I do not intend to accept any other offer. Do you still believe that after all these years you can get away with lying, cheating, and betraying me? Are you really so certain about that? With a pallid face, my spouse remained mute. He was going to have to admit for the first time that he couldn't talk his way out of this one. I got up and picked up my glass of champagne and turned to leave him alone with his thoughts while he was on his knees. It was fantastic to feel like I was in control for once. Calmly, I said, I'm going to take everything from both of you. Otherwise, I will do everything in my power to make sure you regret it. My spouse paused upon noticing the solemn expression in my eyes. All right, he mumbled. I grinned. I will be telling Laura's ex-husband everything, and I will be requesting recompense from you and Laura for what you have done. Second, it's likely that you will both have to pay alimony. I wish you luck on it. Confused, he asked, What do you mean? I got to my feet. Come on, get your stuff. I prodded him as I helped him gather his belongings. Grab your work stuff and let's go. I grabbed his luggage out of his hands and pulled him in the direction of the front door. Where are you taking me? He inquired, his disbelief unfading. Outside, I answered back. This house is mine now since I'm keeping it. Having strangers in my home is wrong. Please wait, he begged. Can't you at least wait until after the divorce? That's not going to happen. I shook my head in response. Not at all? Amy, what the hell? You were silent for a while and now all of a sudden you're callous and cold-hearted? I yelled, Shut up and get out, and used all of my effort to shove him out the door. I had been resentful and stressed out for years, and all of that poured out at once. I suppose you can accumulate bad energy at times. My spouse, Laura, her ex-husband, and I all went down to chat before the divorce papers were served. Laura said that during our wedding she had fallen in love with my husband. Soon after, she'd contacted him, and that's when their affair began. They planned to wait to be together until they were both divorced, so they kept their relationship a secret. They had been deceiving both sets of parents. Laura's ex-husband was distraught to learn of it. To be honest, though, I didn't feel anything when I heard this. If anything, I was appreciative that I had all the information I needed to support my alimony claim. Following her expulsion from her home, my spouse moved in with Laura. However, reality struck her hard when she got alimony demands from her ex-husband and from me. The thought crossed her mind. We can't get married if we're both in debt. My husband was forced out of her residence and discarded by her. I couldn't contain my laughter. Wasn't she the person who was meant to be your soulmate and your spiritual mate? And you're losing her now because of money? It goes without saying that the entire thing appalled me. I said to myself, this is what you get for betraying your wife. It has been 5 years since then. Although he was forced to retire early, my ex-husband is still paying alimony, and he ended up squandering the majority of his retirement funds for it. He's struggling to make ends meet. Regarding Laura, she is heavily indebted and has little chance of finding a suitable partner at this time. It appears that he hasn't altered much. Now that her resources have been depleted by paying alimony, Laura finds herself working in a challenging position. Regarding myself, I've been paid well, but other from that, I just concentrate on my work. Since life is unpredictable, all I strive to do is live a simple life and pursue my happiness. You're ready for anything, as they say, if you're ready for anything. Every day, I look forward to watching German soap operas and spend my days enjoying them. I just met someone at work who shares my love for them. We've even discussed visiting Germany together at some point, and I'm very excited about that. Naturally, I will not be determining whether our soul vibrations are in harmony. All I want is to lead a happy, tranquil life. Right now, I just want to live a happier life every day.